They knew that the true and living God, the Creator God, the God of Israel, was a God of truth, a God of infinite knowledge, infinite power, infinite holiness, and infinite mercy. They had seen that exercise throughout the entire book. When you read the Old Testament, you're going to see God at work. When Jesus came then on the scene in Matthew chapter 1 and 3, if Jesus was to convince them that He was God, He had to manifest all that was true of God. And there are 5 things, and the 5 things are at the very heart of who God is. He is absolute truth, and the source of all that is true and cannot lie. And that is essential, essence, because the only way we're going to know truth is as He reveals it to us. We will not know truth, or what is truth. Truth is what God reveals about Himself. The only way we're going to know truth is to know how God reveals Himself to Himself, about Himself. And all that He has revealed is the fact truth, and all that contradicts it is deception. If you know the truth, then if somebody is not telling the truth, it will be the opposite of what Jesus has done. It is also critical to the nature of God that He knows everything. If He doesn't know everything, then He is not in control of everything. And if He is the sovereign of the universe, who fulfills His purpose in everything that occurs in the universe, and there's nothing in the universe that does not occur that God doesn't know. How often have we seen shows where a meteorite is coming to Earth? God is not surprised by that. He can direct that meteorite anywhere He wants to. Or how big it's going to do when it hits the Earth. Meteorites hit the Earth all the time. They burn up in space, and sometimes it's like a nickel. Or it may be a football. Or it may be the size of a car. It may burn up 3,000 acres in the Sahara Desert. But He knows. It is not a matter of knowing everything only to be sovereign. Well, I'm sovereign, therefore I know everything. He doesn't know everything simply because He's sovereign. It is a matter of controlling everything. It is critical that God is to be absolutely, perfectly, holy, and without sin, or He cannot be the Redeemer of sinners. God cannot do anything that is deceitful, wrong. It has to be done completely in harmony with who God is. And obvious, it is true that He must be a God of mercy in order to overlook our iniquities and give us salvation in spite of our sins. Amen. There are not just minor elements of His nature. Well, sometimes He portrays that. That's not true. There are at the very heart of who God is. In fact, if we were to think long enough and try to come up with a list of things to define God, it couldn't come up with a better list than these. Number 1, truth. God is truth. Number 2, God is knowledge. Number 3, God is power. Number 4, God is holiness. And fifthly, God is mercy. They mark the true and living God. This is who God is. So someone asks you who is God, give them those 5 words. You read the Psalms. You need to read the Old Testament. You need to read the law. You need to read the books of history. You need to read the books of poetry. You need to read any part of the New or the Old Testament. You're going to find God reveals Himself in terms. God writes the Bible, and in that writing He reveals who He is. I am God. Who can even question me? Huh?
Number 3.
What's number 3?
What's number 3?
I haven't got there yet.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What is number 3?
Power.
What's number 4 and 5? I think
Truth, power, knowledge, holiness, and mercy. And the Jewish people knew that. The disciples knew that. They were part of the synagogue crowd. They had been raised in the synagogues, raised in Judaism. They had been raised to be instructed in the Old Testament. They knew their God. They knew His attributes. They knew who He was. They taught little Jewish boys extensively. Every Jewish boy had to learn. Every true Jew had to learn. They knew that. And the Old Testament continues to tell us He is coming in the form of Jesus. This man called Jesus is going to have the characteristics of God. They knew who He was. And when Jesus came, Jesus demonstrated all of those very same attributes. Now, last time we looked at the first 2 attributes, the manifestation themselves in this incident that lay before us. It was early in the day around a lake, usually called the Sea of Galilee. It was a lake. And Jesus has, as it was often the case, managed to draw a crowd around Him. Wherever Jesus went, there were many who were to follow Him. And Jesus had gathered a massive numbering in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. And they were pressed around Him. Verse 1 says, as He was standing by the lake. In fact, the crowd was putting so much pressure on Him, obviously attracted not only to His teaching, but by the fact that He had been healing everybody, every disease that was brought to Him. Jesus didn't heal a few. Jesus healed everybody. And more than likely there was no disease in Israel. Where Jesus went, He healed everybody, everything. If a person came to Him and he didn't have a leg, guess what? He created a leg. I've never seen that ever happen. If a person didn't have an eye, He gave him an eye. If a person didn't have an arm, He gave him an arm. He created something out of nothing. God created the universe out of nothing. So He's demonstrating, I'm God, I create something out of nothing. All of those who were sick with various diseases were brought to Him, and He was healing all of them. He also had been casting demons out of people, demon-possessed. Many demons were coming out crying and saying, "You are the Son of God." The demons knew who he was and called him the Son of God. Verse 41 of the last chapter 4. So his miracles, miraculous power over the kingdom of darkness. He controlled demons. His miracles was the power of the kingdom of disease. He would say, had drawn a tremendous crowd. He was in the process of banishing disease from Palestine and now from Galilee at the first in the north, and then he moved south, and he drew great crowds, and they were pressing against him as he moved backwards to the water to get away from the press. So he may have started 50 feet from the lake, and the crowd's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and he got to the very edge of the lake, and he realized that the only way he was going to be able to teach them was to get in the boat. Verse 2 says he saw two boats lying at the edge of the lake. The fishermen had left them. Apparently one of them belonged to Peter, and the other one belonged to perhaps John or James, the sons of Zebedee, and the two groups were partners in fishing. So both of their boats were pulled up. At least the row of the boat was pulled up onto the shore because the fishing had gone on during the night. And so when they got finished trying to fish, which they couldn't find any fish, they just rowed the boat onto the shore and got out. And it was daytime, and they were mending their nets, and verse 2 tells us that. In verse 3, Jesus gets into one of the boats, the one that belonged to Simon, or Peter, and he asked him to put out a little ways to the land. He said, "Can you row me out a little bit so that I could preach in the boat a few yards away in the water, because I don't know that people who want to come out to the water, they might, I don't know." And he sat down and began to teach the multitude from the boat. Maybe that's where they got that idea. In the church I was in, one Sunday morning, the platform was empty and there was a boat, a fishing boat on the platform with a net. Oh, has the preacher gone mad?